Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second live session and second session on happiness. And I'm still happy to see everybody here. So many people on Zoom as well. So welcome to everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So the title of today is called Happiness Even When Shit Happens. I thought that might get your attention. Because you could say about 5% of our suffering comes from shit just happening, right? 5%. So you have to learn how to be happy, even when that 5%, like stuff happens, right? You get sick, you feel sorrow if a loved one is sick or dies, you stub your toe, all kinds of things just happen. The Buddha called this dukkha dukkha. It's just kind of the events of being human just happen. And I throw out the number 5%. It's about 5. I mean, you can judge in your own experience. The other 95 is, of course, the suffering that we create in our minds about what happens in our life, whether it's good or bad. We can just make stuff up and suffer, right? Have you noticed that? Just make stuff up and we suffer. But I'm going to talk about the other 95% in future weeks. Today I want to talk about how we can be happy when just kind of the dukkha dukkha happens, the natural, the being human kind of suffering. So I want to delve into the couple of things that you need to kind of realize in order to be able to be happy when shit happens, when things kind of go a certain way. So there's a way to be happy amidst the pain and sorrow, the kind of natural pain and sorrow of being human. So there is a way that we can maintain this happiness. And stuff does happen. It's the first noble truth that shit happens. You could say that the Buddha didn't word it that way, but that suffering does occur, both dukkha dukkha and mind created dukkha. It's the first noble truth. So the question is, can we be given this truth? Can we be happy during this pain and sorrow? Or can we only experience happiness when there's an absence of pain and sorrow? Is that kind of how it's going to be? Are they mutually exclusive? Kind of incompatible? You can only have one and the other. So is it possible to be right in the throes of pain and sorrow and still be happy? And are there practices that we can engage in that help us enable that or bring that online, you could say? So to experience happiness amidst pain and sorrow, I'm going to say that there's two things that need to happen for you. First, you must realize the first noble truth, that shit happens, right? So when it does happen, you don't go, oh my God, why me? Well, it's you because you're human. You get sick because you have a human body. People die because they have human bodies. And the Buddha wasn't trying to be, a downer, just kind of stating things the way they are. So we don't kind of bury our heads in the sand and not be able to kind of face the things that are part of being human. So that's the first thing, is realize that suffering, pain and sorrow, and I'm talking about the 5%, the pain and sorrow is an inevitable part of being human. And the second thing is that pain and sorrow and happiness are not incompatible. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't have, if you have one, you can't have the other. So I'm going to kind of present ways that we can engage with life such that we can actually be happy when we're experiencing pain and sorrow. And here's a little story to illustrate this. Imagine that you're in a hospital bed and the prognosis isn't good. Your doctor comes in and you keep telling her that you're frightened and anxious. You tell her that death scares you and you can't imagine being without your loved ones. You say that it feels like your whole world is falling apart. Your doctor listens carefully, and you wait for her to comfort you and reassure you. Instead, she says, I understand what you're saying, but are you happy? Now that can sound, at first, that can sound insensitive and uncaring to say that, but it's only insensitive and uncaring if we think that pain and happiness are inherently incompatible. This person couldn't actually be happy amidst very deep pain. And if we think that happiness and pain and sorrow are mutually exclusive, then the possibilities for happiness are very limited, are minimal, because we will experience pain and sorrow in our lives. So it's so if the only way to be happy is to avoid pain and sorrow, then we're in an impossible dilemma, right? We're going to find happiness elusive much of the time. So how can we possibly live in happiness while we're experiencing pain and sorrow? I worked in my life over the years, worked in different refugee camps and war zones, and saw abundant happiness amongst the pain and sorrow that was being experienced by the people there. So I always wondered, why is that? Why are people laughing and quite joyful and very, very happy and in a very tough situation? At first, it was near impossible for me to remain happy in those situations. I would get very sad, would feel depressed from what I was seeing. And I could see that I was kind of transferring that to the people that I was engaging with as well. I could kind of bring a room down just by coming in with this kind of sad, depressed look on my face. Eventually, a nurse said to me, why do you bring sorrow into the camps? These are refugee camps in this case. They have enough sorrow. Please bring happiness. That was kind of my first kind of like, bring happiness. How can you be happy? And this was, I was in my 20s at the time. How can you be happy in this? I was shocked. And then I slowly realized that she was right. I saw that my contribution to the situation came as much from my presence, from my being, as it did from the work that I was doing. That was just as important. What I brought to it, my smile, my sense of possibility, and the love that I could bring to the situation. So I discovered that I could participate in war zones and refugee camps and remain in touch with this essential nature of happiness and love, and the deepest happiness and love of those people that I was working with. In fact, I think in many ways, people in those very, very difficult situations are touching into that deepest nature more readily, because they kind of have to, just to get through each day. There's a poem that illustrates this. I hadn't heard of this poem. I just came across it this week. It's by Jack Gilbert. Excuse me. And it's entitled A Brief for the Defense by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they're starving someplace else, with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise, the mornings before summer dawn would not be so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they've known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of the world. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that the end had magnitude. Quite the poem. But I don't think, when I read that, I thought, wow, you can't be any more direct in your statement of pointing directly at the importance of happiness and delight and laughter, even amidst injustice and pain. So yeah, I thought that was quite, that poem just kind of jumped out, and I thought it fits so well with the theme. And some may feel, hear that poem and feel that it's wrong to feel happiness when there's such injustice and pain in the world, or perhaps in your life. In terms of injustice in the world, I mean, we do our work in the world, whatever that might be, sort of however that might manifest for you. It's different for each of us, but we can do so with happiness rather than sort of anger or despair. We can do so with delight and joy. Jack Kornfield says that we can be quite loyal to our suffering, which is an interesting way to put it. But he says it's not our deepest nature. We can learn compassion for this mind and body and all the struggles that every human being has. But he says this is not the end of the story. The end of the story is to live in happiness, even amongst the joys and sorrows of life. So Jack Kornfield talks a lot about, as does Sharon Salzberg. I think she has a book called Real Happiness, kind of a 28-day course that takes you through different practices. So there's some bigger understanding of happiness that Jack is pointing to. And we don't have to practice for 15 years. We don't have to go to Thailand and sit in a yurt in the forest. Don't have to go to an ashram on a 3-month retreat. Do 7 hours of yoga every day. I've done a lot of these things, so I'm telling you, you don't have to do these things. Because I thought that, if I do these things, this is what I need to do in order to get it right. And I kept thinking, it's just around the corner. We don't have to do all that and think then we'll somehow get it somewhere in the future. It's like, it's your birthright. It's here, right now. Right now. As I said, most human suffering is constructed in the mind. So the 95% of our suffering that I kind of randomly, maybe it's 90, I don't know, but it's a lot. It's way more than half, I would say. And you just have to look at your own experience to be the judge of that. And when we let go of the egoic, what I call the egoic mind. It's that mind that struggles with everything, based on wanting what it wants and not wanting what it doesn't want, and being very confused all the while. The three poisons: greed, hatred, delusion. So when these are kind of reversed and it becomes generosity, love, and understanding, then our true nature can shine through. And this is where happiness resides. That's why the Buddha talked so much about cultivating those attitudes of generosity and love and understanding. And it's not all that complicated. I mean, we sometimes make it complicated. I know I did. I looked even at some of my very early Dharma talks last year. Sometime I started reading talks from 15 years ago, and I was reading them and I'm going, wow, I really made that complicated. Like, I don't know, I needed to figure it out before I could say it. I was confused reading it, so I can imagine what the people I was teaching it to were feeling at the time. But it doesn't need to be complicated. It's just kind of a honest way of seeing the way the world and life is. And remembering that it's possible to live in this world of joys and sorrows, to live in this flow, to let go of needing to struggle with it in a way that brings happiness. There's a way to engage in the world, the beauty of it and the suffering of it, and say, yes, this is the way it is. I see what causes suffering and I see what causes happiness in this world. And the more we see it, the more we move towards happiness. In our meditation practice, our formal meditation practice, and just kind of Dharma practices, the informal stuff that we do during the day. What attitude do we bring to that? Do we bring an attitude of that, wanting something to change? Probably in the future. It's going to take a while because I'm such a mess. Right? It's going to be doing this for a while, I think, because I got a lot of talk about shit happening, man. If you saw my list, you wouldn't believe it. And many, I think most of us feel that way. I had lots of childhood traumas, lots of things to be anxious about in this world. So we sometimes come to our meditation like it's a self-improvement project or a rebuilding project that we need to engage in. Kind of like going to the gym to get fit or going on a diet to get slim. I'm going to meditate to get rid of this or that or become more like this or that. I'm going to be more like the Dalai Lama or, whoever you sort of look at as you want to emulate. So really seeing if you have that attitude and maybe letting go of that a little. Realizing that you're the same as the Dalai Lama or whoever else, you share in Salzburg or whoever it might be. I remember somebody asked me, I think it's how the story goes, way back, why do you meditate? And I said, well, I want to be less judgmental. I hate how judgmental I am. And the person's, I need to fix this. I want to fix this. And the person kind of laughed. And I said, well, what's so funny? He said, you can't see that you were just judgmental about how judgmental you were. It's a contradiction in the statement. So just being able to rest where we are, seeing, there's a judgmental thought arising. There it is. There it goes. It's about as real as a cloud floating through the sky, or a bubble bubbling up in a river. Let go and rest. Let go and rest in our place of patience. Here's a quote from Rumi. When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. Let me say that again. It's a good sentence, Rumi. When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me, and without pain. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me, and without pain. From this, I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me and attracting me. This is a great secret here for anyone who can grasp it. Yeah. I love that. My own place of patience. See that judgmental thought. I can just rest in my own place of patience, that true nature. So in the meditation practice that is helpful in cultivating this happiness amidst pain and sorrow is what I call a letting go meditation. So the intention here is to just be present with your direct experience, whatever you're encountering, moment to moment, whatever is arising and passing. So not the thoughts about it, but the bare experience. When I say it's bare of narrative or commentary or decision. It's just what is. So there's a sound, there's a body sensation, another body sensation, another sound, a thought, the breath. So we're just experiencing it all directly, just as it is. We're letting it flow. And what we're letting go of here is the need to control or interfere with this natural flow. Whatever's arising and passing through. And if we see the impulse to control or interfere, notice that this is just a thought, right? It's just it's arisen as a thought that can also just be seen directly and let go. Isn't that interesting? Because any movement to struggle or try to control or interfere with what's arising, it first appears as a thought that is relieved and then acted upon. If it's just seen as a thought arising, it let go, it self-liberates, it lets go naturally. It's not something you do to let go. It just flows, it flows through. So we're contacting and opening to our experience directly. So I think in the meditation we did, I said letting, I don't think I've ever said this before, letting awareness meet the breath. So you're just allowing the breath to be, it's another way of saying bringing attention to it, but it's got this kind of softness of just opening to the breath and completely relinquishing any control over what's in the moment. Doesn't mean we don't act in the next moment. Right? And I have to always say that because the egoic mind will go, well, if I just accept everything, I'm going to be a doormat. So It just means you accept what's flowing in the moment so that you can then respond from wisdom rather than react from old conditioned habits. That's the idea. So we're letting go into the flow of life. And I like the analogy of waves. It's like a wave appearing in the ocean. It appears and then it dissolves back into the ocean. And everything in your experience is just like that. It's like it's appearing out of universal consciousness, which you could say is the ocean. And then it's dissolving back into that. So that analogy is actually quite helpful in as imagery, I guess you could say, for the process of letting go. So the letting go meditation, I think, is very helpful because when shit happens, pain and sorrow arises, we can go, oh, here's pain and sorrow. Here's the body sensations, thoughts, feelings, emotions that are arising with it, and allowing those to flow. If we struggle with them in some way, it becomes very difficult to connect with our inner, deepest, essential nature of happiness and love, because it gets all clouded over, right? It gets covered by all the egoic struggle. Yeah. I've got a little story here. Who told this story? Wendy Campbell, about a meeting with the Dalai Lama. This is an old story from many years ago. The meeting focused on the 5 most important, they put together 5 questions for the Dalai Lama. The 5 questions were: how do we address the widening gap between the rich and the poor? How do we protect the earth? How do we educate our children? How do we help Tibet and other oppressed peoples? And how do we bring spirituality and a deep caring for each other through our lives? And the Dalai Lama said, well, all the questions fall under the last one, so I'll just answer the last one. If we have true compassion, then all those other things will happen. And then he said, I'm going to share with you a practice that will bring increased love and compassion into the world. And then he asked everybody at this meeting to go home and share this with people in their communities. And it's a very simple and interesting practice. He says, and I spent some time doing this, and I do every once in a while come back to it. Spend 5 minutes at the beginning of each day remembering we all want the same thing: to be happy and to be loved. And remember that we're all connected. So at 5 minutes, just remembering that we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy. We all want to be loved. And then spend 5 minutes cherishing yourself and others. Letting go of judgments. So you just breathe in, cherishing yourself. Breathe out, cherishing others. And if the faces of people you're having difficulty with appear, cherish them as well. I like the way he put that. That's a good way to put it, loving kindness. If the faces of the people you're having difficulty with appear, then send them well wishes. So cherish them as well. 3, during the day, extend that attitude to everyone you meet. We're all the same, and I cherish myself and you. Do that with everybody you come across, even like shopkeepers, clients, family, colleagues. That attitude of we're all the same. We want happiness and to be loved, and I cherish myself and you. And 4, stay in the practice no matter what happens. Maybe I'll put that little practice in the description of the video as well online. People, because there's a lot to remember. Well, really not. We're all the same. We all want to be happy Dalai Lama says that pretty much every time he speaks. And then cherishing ourselves and others. And a little breathing in, I cherish myself. Breathing out, I cherish others. So I'm just going to conclude with a piece by the Buddha in the Dhammapada, chapter 15, entitled Joy. Live in joy, in love, even amongst those who hate. Live in joy, in health, even among the afflicted. Live in joy, in peace, even among the troubled. So I'll just open it up for any questions or comments.
Stephen?
Yes. Hi. Hi, Ioana. Hi.
Ioana. Hello.
Ioana. Yeah.
Hello, everyone on Zoom. Hello, little teeny tiny people in the little square. Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful talk. A lot of great things there, and I'll try not to talk too much, which is my tendency. But a few things came to mind. So I had a conversation the other day with two people, and I said to the fellow, "How are you doing today?" And he said, "I'm doing amazing. I'm doing so great. What is there to complain about? Life is awesome." So this fellow was from the Republic of Congo and was a refugee in Uganda for like 15 years. He has no parents. And I made a comment to him and the lady in the meeting, and I said, "How is it that the people who struggled the most seem to be the happiest?" And she said, "Because we know that at any moment, or people know that at any moment, life can be taken away from them, and it's so precious." And I'm thinking of, I was born in Lebanon. I think you know that there was war and bombs, and that wasn't even an issue. I don't remember it as being traumatic or anything. I spent my teenage years in Lebanon, same deal, things happening all the time. But I always thought the people in Lebanon really lived their lives like it was, like they lived every day like it was their last, because it could have been their last. And they had such a great positive outlook. It doesn't mean that, my dad is still in Lebanon and he'll still complain about the gas and all these weird things that are happening, but then he'll go, "How are you? I'm so happy to hear from you." So it doesn't last very long. They'll just kind of, I remember my ex-sister-in-law said, "Oh, Ioana, my dad was just shot." And then I think maybe a few days later, we were just laughing and joking about something. So and then I thought about a few days ago how I was having a great day, and then shit happened somewhere in the middle of the day, as you would say. And then I thought, that ruined everything. That negated everything that happened earlier on in the day, as if the good things that happened earlier on no longer existed, and I can no longer enjoy the rest of the day. So it's kind of like a reverse principle where they're like, bombs happen all the time, shit happens all the time, and the good stuff are really the things that we're going to highlight. And for me, it seems that sometimes it's more like, "Oh, I want to hold on to the great things that are happening." When shit happens, then that's all I'm now focusing on. So, I mean, obviously I try not to do that, but I did notice that happen the other day. I noticed it happened today. And so your talk was really a great reminder, really, of that, of just that noticing when it happens, not to judge ourselves when we do think those things or we do realize those things, but then also maybe to take that time to go, "Oh yeah, life is pretty awesome. And why make it worse with that, the second arrow, I guess." So thank you for that talk. It really illuminated, it highlighted, reminded, it was just all the things. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I could ask everyone two questions. How was your day? The second question is why? So if you said, "Well, my day was really, really good," well, why? Was it because everything was agreeable? It went according to how you wanted it to go? If you say, "Oh, it wasn't such a good day," why? Was it because, again, the external circumstances weren't quite the way you wanted them to be? The people you came into contact with weren't the way you wanted them to be? Right? So you're just pointing to that those two questions came to mind. I heard those two questions being asked, and they're very telling, because when we have a bad day, an unhappy day, you could call it, we're relinquishing our control to people and circumstances. Right? We had a bad day because so-and-so did this, so I had a bad day. And then what really gives you then is the opportunity to blame them. I had a bad day because so-and-so did this, right? Or I had a bad day because, something happened, an event, an external event you had no control over that happened, caused you to have a bad day. So what you've just done is you've relinquished any control to people and events that you have no control over what somebody else is going to do or say, or what event is going to randomly arise, for the most part. And same thing with a good day. Somebody says something nice. Oh, I have a good day because so-and-so smiled at me and said I was a good guy, or whatever it might be, right? They could be lying through their teeth. No, you're still giving the power. You're relinquishing the power to other people and circumstances. Your happiness is in their hands rather than within your purview. You could say your control, although it's not really control. It's allowing. Yeah, that just came to mind, Joanna, when you said that we can be happy no matter what, the external circumstances, or no matter what people are doing or saying around us. Yeah.
Hello, Stephen.
Yes, hello.
Just sharing an experience, which I suppose, at this time, way back, it does sound very funny. During the refugee camps, well, I went through that stage. I was only 7 or 8 years old when the partition between India and Pakistan happened. So we were all refugees. My father got shot. Anyway, we were all sitting in a camp, 2 brothers, myself, and my mother. Of course, not very strong, way back sitting there. And of course, the trucks came in and they were giving the food and the bread. And they were throwing the breads out because there were lots of people. And of course, the 3 of us, not very strong, we didn't walk up there. And me sitting in the back when the person throwing the bread, he was throwing all the big guys, they were in front and they were trying to catch the bread. And when the bread came in from one hand, it just flew off. He was trying to catch it. It went on to the other one, Nobody was able to catch it. And at the end of it, it just ended up on the floor where there was a young little boy was sitting. And he got it. And I was sitting there and I just laughed about it, how funny it was. But I suppose that kind of happiness probably came in that innocence. Today, if I start analyzing it, then there is all the reasons. And I think to take life as is, in that innocence, and very many of us, we have lost that innocence. If somebody asked me, how was the day? You asked that one. Why it was good? Because I don't have any control on it. It just goes by without any control of mine. That's it.
Yeah, you could say, yeah, my day was good because it went the only way it could go.
Thank you.
So thanks for this series, Stephen, and also thanks for including us, those of us who can't attend in person. That's it looks great though. I can't wait to do that. But it's, you know, the talk tonight about being happy is sort of, no matter what the circumstances, it kind of really reminds me of some of the basic sort of teachings that you've touched on many times, and perhaps I'm not sure which Buddhist thing, but the more we grasp after something, sort of just like the bread, the more we fight each other for the bread to catch the bread, or the more we say, you know, my day has to, we have these expectations about the day needs to be like this, and as soon as that happens, I'm very upset. And yeah, and giving over control to others. You know, that's the pushing away and the grasping. And, you know, I don't want that, I do want this. It all kind of boils back down to that. And for some reason it's in our nature. Well, I don't know, I'm so sorry, our true nature maybe, but our egoic nature to do that. And although it sounds so simple, it sure ain't easy. But it's we can never be reminded enough, I think.
Yeah, these are they're impulses, right? That arise in us to grasp at what we want, push away what we don't want. So although I say it's, you know, it's the egoic mind, it's actually our the way we're wired in terms of our survival mind. We think we need to control our environment in order to survive. There's something deep biologically, I mean, fight or flight or freeze is like hardwired right into us, which is a survival reaction. You have no control over it, just happens, right? You see danger, one of those three things, things start changing in your body, your blood flows to different places to get ready for either flight or fight or freeze. And so we have these impulses that are very natural. So it's not like we're not going to get rid of them. Like you want to not step out in front of a car. You want to, you know, react in that way to not get your hands caught in a saw or something, right? You want to have those survival instincts. And a large, that part of us that grasps and pushes away is all very natural. So we're not trying to get rid of it. It's part of who we are as human beings. But it's not the end of the story. It's not who we are in our deepest sense. It's who we are at our kind of surface, at a surface level of survival. And we will still, our egoic ego will never, you know, it's not something, it's ego is not a thing anyway, it's processes. It's never going to go away, and we don't want it to go away. It's just that we can see beyond it, behind it. If we only live at the level of the egoic reactions, we never get in touch with our deeper essential nature, which is beyond that. So that's all this is. I mean, that's what awakening is. So it's awakening to your true nature beyond all these egoic impulses. Doesn't mean all those egoic impulses go away. You just say, oh, wow, look, there's a thought. Wow, there's a grasping thought. Conditioned. Yeah, that thought's come up a million times in my life, that conditioned reaction. There it is again. Jesus, meditate another 15 years. It'll probably still come up, but you know it's not your deepest essential nature. I had a short story. I had a dream last night that I was backpacking, and you know, with backpacking you carry all the stuff you need, so you want it as light as possible. And Vida was in this dream, my wife, and she said we need to pick up a few things for meals, and it was a 2-night, 3-day trip. It was all these details were actually in the dream, right? And we need to pick up a few things. Okay. So she goes and she picks up these things. I put my pack on. It's like, oh my God, this is heavy. So I open it up and there's all these essential items on the top, and I move them out of the way, and there's chocolate and books. 4 books. There was a distinct number, and that's why I remember it was 2 days, because I said, how are you going to read four books in two nights? We're hiking. So I got all angry and I threw the chocolate on the ground and it broke into pieces. And I woke, and then I woke up, of course, when those emotions became part of the dream. And I laid there and my heart was pounding and I was upset and there were emotions flowing through my body, and I actually felt some dislike of my wife who was in the bed beside me. How could you do that? And it felt like it all felt that I just sort of sat and felt it all, because I thought this is very real. I mean, this is as real as if it actually more real, because none of this would actually happen in my life, right? So it's weird how the egoic mind in this being is playing out in my dreams. But I had to actually sit and I don't know how long it took, but it just took me some time. I had to go back to like basic practices of being present for the emotions that were arising, for the body, just all this flow of body sensations, because I had just had the arising of anger and blame and all these deep emotions that I haven't felt come up. And I know it might at least taken me half an hour to an hour just to kind of process all this. And then it was so amazing because I could see all this cloud, and then slowly I could kind of see my true nature shine through as I just allowed that to flow through. Of course, none of it was a dream. So it was, but your life is just as much a dream in many ways, right? Just letting it flow through, and then slowly true nature could shine through and just be touched into. And then that's the last thing I remember, and I was asleep again. How did I get onto that story? But it seemed relevant when I started. But yeah, it's just how we our this egoic impulse. It's very real, and it doesn't go away. And we just learn to relate to it in a different way, to engage with this flow, which includes these impulses, these conditioned impulses. Yeah. Although that dream last night was actually a deep teaching for me to experience that. I took it as a grace, or as an offering in my life, just to be able to experience that.
I find myself wanting to add that, at least in my experience, when I am grasping after things that I think will make me happy. They never ever do when I attain them. The happiness always kind of sneaks in from a back corner from some other completely unrelated thing. And which means to me, I mean, there's almost no point in seeking it. Like the more I actually the analogy that comes to me is that the more I sit in one seat and just let life flow as opposed to grasping it. I mean, this whole talk for me was kind of affirming what I haven't been doing, and that I'm still kind of on the path, even though I haven't been doing anything about it, which has been really fun to listen to. So that's not what I thought I was going to say at all. Anyway, I'm grateful to be here, Stephen, and I'm really glad it's back in person.
It's great to have you back. Great to see you. Yeah. We struggle, right, with life because we think we need to. The egoic mind just thinks that's it, and it for the egoic mind to let go of struggle is very well, it takes courage to let go of the struggle in one sense, and the other thing that you will see is the egoic mind gets very afraid at the idea of letting go of struggling with life because it thinks things will just twirl out of control if it does. And again, there's no it's simply a processes, but sometimes feels like an entity that's thinking, oh, I gotta struggle, and there's a real fear, and you'll maybe even have those thoughts come out into the mind of, oh no, if you don't worry about this, you're going to have some deep shit happen. And he says shit might happen if you don't worry about this all night. Shit's going to happen tomorrow, and you'll have thoughts like that. We've all had those thoughts, and we're all the same in that way. And we can touch our deepest nature at any time. There's no path. You don't have to go anywhere or get anything. We have different levels of cloud cover, I guess you could say, right? Depending on our, call it karmic conditioning, just based on that just means, it's another way of saying based on our, what's transpired in our lives in terms of events and conditioning and so on. Could create more cloud cover, more fear of letting go, right? So if we've experienced a lot of trauma in our lives, there'll be a heightened fear of letting go from the egoic mind because it thinks it really, really must be on high alert all the time. Otherwise, bad things will happen. So that's a lot of cloud cover, right? So it makes it for true nature to shine through that can take some real courage to let go into the flow of life, as you put it, just to let go. And even if we just ease off a little bit in the grasping and pushing away, it can shine through. Yeah. Thanks for that. Could everybody hear that at the other end on Zoom? Could hear what she said? Yeah.
Also, not.
So, no. Yeah, this is where the computer's actually better at picking up. I'll switch to the computer mic for. It might not sound as good when I speak now, but it will probably sound better when the group speaks. Yeah, there's microphones all inside the keyboard here, so it tends to pick up all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Stephen, I was wondering, that poem by Rumi, I quite liked it. And I was wondering if there's some way you can post it or send it out, or even just give us the title so we can
Yeah.
find it. It's so concise and well said. Back in the 13th century, can't believe it.
Yeah, his stuff is amazing. It's just reading Rumi can part the clouds.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't need to twirl while you read it. So the twirling dervishes come from Rumi would twirl, and then these would just flow out of his mouth as the story goes. He never sat down and composed poetry. They would just be spontaneous, verbal poetry as he would twirl around the room. But I can post it with the video if people are interested in that, and with the when I post the practice as well. I'm not sure I actually have I have so many of these little tidbits around that sometimes I don't actually have the source, but I've found if you just type the poem into Google, it actually finds the source for you. So that's another way that I can do it. But yeah, it is beautiful. The way he put that is the place of patience. It's our place of patience. What did he say? When I run around getting what I think I want, my life is like a furnace of anxiety and fear. I can't remember the other word. Yeah, furnace. Yeah, we're burning. The Buddha used that analogy a lot, of this sense of burning. When we're struggling with life, we feel like we're burning. And nirvana, of course, is the extinguishing of that fire. That furnace.
I have one thing. Some things came up, and thanks so much, Stephen. It's great to be here with everybody too. And with all the lovely people online, thank you. Yeah, that was a really excellent meditation and talk, and a couple of things came up for me during the meditation. One was when you said, just notice the bare awareness. And what came into my mind was like, BEAR, bare awareness. And I was like, well, yeah, well, it's kind of the opposite of bare awareness. Normally we're in this bare awareness mode where we're like thinking that everything, this is like what samsara is, thinking that everything in the world is a bear that's going to kill us. We're in bare awareness mode, whereas what we, through the practice, we can get into bare awareness mode, which is, I thought that was a good way of looking at it. And I mean, there's the dukkha, like you said. I mean, but that's actually probably the real bears that are going to come, eat you for dinner. And then you have all the other whatever, like you said. So that came up. And then another thing you said was, when you mentioned you were talking about bringing or shining awareness on the breathing, and then you kind of went through and through different aspects of experience, and then you got to mind, and you said mind, and I thought you were going to say minding the mind, because it's kind of what you're saying, but you switched to thoughts thinking themselves. And what came up for me at that moment was, wow, mindfulness, sati, which is the Pali word for, well, it's been translated into mindfulness, but one of the translations is remembering. But I just thought what can also be reminding. It's like we're actually totally out of our big mind, and now it's in those moments of mindfulness we're coming back into it. And I just thought, oh, that's really, really. I don't know. I'm not a Pali or a Sanskrit. Like I know some of the words, from reading and from listening to your teaching, But that almost hits the nail a bit more on the head. I think stop your mindfulness, but a reminding in terms of mind. It's, you know, minding, because the mind is just minding, and that's really what it is. That's really, I mean, the minding is really everything. Everything is just a big, huge minding. And the other thing was the control. You talked about control. I like that we went into that, because for me, control is what the ego wants to control, but like, so the ego is the illusion of control. And once that illusion of control, once it's kind of deeply seen past, then there's no control, but that's when there's no suffering. The total letting go of control. There's no, you know, it's like, and I feel like, okay, total letting go of control. This must be kind of at the source of at the source of nirvana, and at the source of the you know, whatever went into making this kind of big thing, whatever it is that we live in. It's not even a thing. It's just you can't really say, there's no word. We say words so we can talk, but to each other. Anyways, I just think that the control thing is so, yeah, living in that state of just no control is that's true control, which is our true nature, but it's no control. It's the true control of no control.
I like your bare awareness. Bare. I think there's a poem there, Jason. Bare awareness.
Yeah,
beware of all the bears we're trying to control. Well, our time is up. Just before I say goodbye, I've got these cards that I had made like 15 years ago, and I got little stickers and put it over the old address, and then whited out, or blacked out Wednesday night, because it used to be on Wednesday night. So I'm going to make these available for people to put, I don't know, in your yoga studios or wherever you think there might be people that would be interested in coming to these groups, because I think the groups we're doing right now, the sessions, are very accessible for people to come into at this point, because we're speaking at different levels and topics that interest most meditators. So yeah, so I'll make these available for people online. If you want some, let me know, and I'll figure out a way to get some to you, either through the mail if you're in Toronto, or you know, leave them for you. So yeah, so that's that. And thanks everyone for coming, and it's great to see you, and see you next week.
Thank you,
Thank
Stephen.
you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Stephen. Good to see everybody. Have a good week.
You too.
Bye.
Yeah, happy Halloween, everybody's coming in.
Yeah, happy Halloween. Yeah.